All right, joining me now is Gadi Adelman. He is a counterterrorism expert and advisor. Gadi, welcome back to the show tonight. Gadi, let's start with these riots, because it's been almost a year since the so-called March of Return violent riots on the Gaza border began. And this Friday, Hamas has called them off. So does this now undoubtedly confirm that these are orchestrated riots by the terrorist group and not just civilian demonstrations that are potentially as spontaneous as the Palestinians often claim?
Well, they can't have it both ways. If you recall, when there was that large, massive amount of people killed middle of last year, I should say, when I believe 62 people were killed at the fence, Hamas admitted the next day that 53 of those 60 some odd killed were Hamas operatives. So it's obvious and known by anyone on the ground there and by many here in the United States and throughout the world that Hamas is behind these riots. There's no doubt about that.
Hamas is claiming, Gadi, that the rockets fired at Tel Aviv were a mistake. Hamas clearly had the launcher set up to fire towards Tel Aviv in the event of a future conflict. That's at least what they're saying. So from an Israeli perspective, it's not really that reassuring that this was supposedly an accident. Do you buy this idea of it being a mistake, or perhaps was this a rogue act by lower-level Hamas operatives?
Yeah, from what I'm hearing, that's absolutely correct. It was lower-level Hamas people that did this. As we discussed last night, Hamas was at the time in a meeting with Egyptian mediators. Israel has confirmed that Hamas was behind the launch, Hamas members. I wouldn't say it was an accident. It may be titled as a mistake. I would hate to be in the shoes of the individuals that were Hamas members that were behind this, because for the first time ever, Hamas actually did say they would go and find those that were responsible and punish them. We have to remember a couple of different things. If any rocket were to enter any other country from an enemy, and they were to say it's a mistake, and then the leader of that country were to come out and say, well, yes, they're our enemy, but it was a mistake, so let's just, let bygones be bygones, it wouldn't stand. So Israel had to retaliate, and there's a lot of skepticism in Israel as to whether or not it was a mistake.
And that retaliation, Gadi, we know that the Israeli Defense Forces took out around 100 Hamas targets in response to this. Some, as we mentioned, are praising Netanyahu for a measured response, for him not taking the bait, not being provoked into a bigger conflict, which may be the agenda of the likes of Iran, for example. Others condemning him for not doing enough to deter terrorists. What's your read on the level of response, given the military options?
Netanyahu is between a rock and a hard place. In Israel, the problem right now as it stands is, had he done more than those 100 targets, those that are living in the Gaza envelope in the south that deal with these rockets almost on a daily basis, along with the riots, along with the IEDs, along with the balloon bombs, they would have said, so Tel Aviv is more important than us. Central Israel, the people that live there, are more important than us. So he's playing a real diplomatic game right now. He had to do something, but he also didn't want to turn off his potential voters with the election coming up in southern Israel.
Yeah, it is a dance that he has to play, as you say, especially as the elections are approaching April 9th. We do have this Hamas now brokered by Egypt between Israel and the terrorist group. How long does a ceasefire last, Gadi?
Till the next kite bomb? I mean, we go through this every time. And I have been saying since prior to the war in 2014, which, by the way, was the last time that we saw rockets fired that far into central Israel, I've been saying that Israel needs to take off the gloves, because this is an ongoing tit-for-tat game. Just like last night we saw, as soon as Israel retaliated, you had 9 more rockets fired into southern Israel. And what does Hamas do? They blame Israel for attacking them, and they use that as an excuse to fire more rockets. So this ceasefire always, every single time, I can't even count how many there have been, only lasts until the next rocket, which could be tomorrow, it could be next week.
And that, Gadi, has been the frustration echoed by many in the right. Gadi Adelman, thank you so much. All right, shifting away. Thank you, Gadi.